Hey everybody, welcome back to week 2 of this month's Know Better, So Better series. We're talking about between service maintenance. So if you missed last week, go back and watch the replay. We did cover everything as far as chemicals, cleaning, what to clean with, what to lubricate with, what's okay, what's not okay. So if you missed last week, it's really imperative before you move on to this one. I do apologize that I had to delay our live this week from Tuesday until today. We don't normally travel, so when we do, we're not we're not the best at being organized about it. So I do apologize for our delay, but I'm glad I could be here with you today. So again, we're talking about today, we're going to talk about the needle bar area, the check spring, and the tension disc as far as cleaning goes. I do have a few reminders, so I'm going to go ahead and jump into my slides. Unlike most weeks, this week I do have some videos incorporated into my regular slide presentation. So it's a little bit different of a layout than you're used to. So we'll just get started here. So I'm going to add this to my screen and we're going to do this. All right. So again, needle bar area, check spring, and tension discs. So again, this is a repeat from last week, but it's very important to remember that this maintenance does not replace routine service. Routine service is more than just taking the bobbin out, cleaning out the lint, and putting a drop of oil in. I cannot tell you how many of my customers have come in a rough situation with their machine because they've been servicing it themselves for years, and all they've been doing is taking the bobbin case out and cleaning the lint. This is a reminder that whatever you pull out of your machine in the process I'm teaching in the series, we're still only getting a fraction of the lint that's in the machine. Okay, so this doesn't replace routine service. Please read your manual for oiling instructions. You're going to notice, especially in this week's broadcast, and I'm not going to talk a lot about oiling because modern machines are manufactured much different than our vintage machines, whereas most of them have been made with impregnated oil impregnated metal, which I know is a hard concept to grasp, but we don't need to add oil in the same way that we do on our vintage machines. Do not try to remove the covers without proper instruction. I understand this temptation. I'm going to teach you, if you don't already know how to take off the needle bar cover in this series. Beyond that, it's real easy to build some confidence from that and be like, I can figure this out the rest of the way, but I assure you, you can do serious damage to your machine if you don't know how to remove the covers properly to get into the machine. That is something that we are cover in our upcoming program, which is Remove Your Covers, Modern Sewing Machine Maintenance, that's releasing on November 8th. Do not use canned air. You're never going to hear me advocate for a time to use canned air, especially in this series where you're not taking the covers off completely. Canned air is going to do nothing but push lint further into the machine and cause further damage. So again, all those things are covered last week. Do not over tighten screws. We may take some screws out in order to get that needle bar cover off this week, but if we do, when you put them back on, don't over tighten the screws. All right, so this is what we're going to talk about. And these are just for visuals right now. When I say external check spring, most people are like, I don't even know what that is. So I want to make sure you have a visual of what a check spring is. So you can see there's two arrows here. This one on the left is off of a Janome, like a TL98 or something with the external upper tension assembly. And my little red arrow here is pointing to this little wire coming off. You can see that is called a check spring. And when you thread your machine, your thread comes down, goes through the tension disc, comes back up, goes through that little wire spring there, and then keeps going back up to the take-up lever. What the check spring does, if you've ever watched it when it's when you're sewing, it does kind of spring down. It goes back and forth with the thread, and it helps keep the thread in place in the tension disc as your needle bar goes up and down. That's my best explanation right now. So it does have a very specific, important function. When that spring gets old, bent, worn, broken, rusted, clogged, or whatever, it stops springing, and then you start having issues like tension issues, skip stitches, broken threads. Same thing as pretty much everything else. Okay, on the right here, this is a vintage machine, which you'll see more often than not the tension assembly on the outside of the machine, and it's very hard to see on this one because it's tiny, but it's literally right here at the edge. So it has the same kind of setup. So that's what you're looking at. This other area over here is pointing to the tension discs. So these two little metal circle things back here is the tension disc, and your thread actually runs between them. And that's what creates the drag on the thread, or known as tension. So the tighter your tension, the more tight those discs are, the lighter the tension, the looser they are. Okay. So you're going to access all of these parts through the needle bar cover. Now, on most Genomes, you are lucky that you have a door that swings open. It depends on the model. I know that the Memory Craft series and some others have the swing open door, which you see here. So here's the door on the outside, and this is with it swung open. You can see into the needle bar area. On most machines, you're going to have 1 or 2 screws that you need to remove. So you're going to have either a screw on the side, on the back, or both. If the screw is on the side, it's almost always, I can't think of a machine where if the screw's on the side, it doesn't have to come completely out. Should be a short screw. If you have a screw on the back, just the back, like in this situation, this has got both. This is a Juki. So this screw over here on the right, I have marked loosen. You would just you could take it out if you wanted to, but if you loosen that screw and remove the side screw, then the whole needle bar cover is just going to pull right off. On some of your lower end machines, now this is a Brother CS6000i, very popular machine, a low end computerized machine. It's a little bit deceiving. There is a screw in the back to take off this little plastic cover here, but when you take that off, the entire needle bar area is still pretty much covered by there's another cover inside the cover, so you're only going to be able to reach a certain amount. When this happens, I do not recommend trying to take off the covers of these machines when you can't get to the needle bar anyway. Unless you're going through our training on how to remove the covers, or you're taking it to be serviced, so much damage can be done. This particular model, if you have this model, please listen. And then this isn't the only one. There's several Brother models and other brands. There's major issues here. When there's screws in here that they don't all come out. If there's a couple of vital screws that if you take them out, your machine is dead in the water because they're machined in. And if you take it out, there's no way to get it back in. The second issue is that you have computer components in here. So if you're not taking this off properly, it's real easy to rip the wires out, cause damage to the board. And then the third issue is if you don't get the covers back on together, your tension is going to not even have any tension. So if it's not super cut and dry like I'm teaching you here, please don't try to figure it out. So we're going to move on. I'm going to do a short video here so that you can see how to remove a needle bar cover if it's not a swing open door, if it has screws in it. So let's take a look at that. So I'm going to give you a little demonstration on how most needle bar covers work. This is the only cover I'm really going to advocate you taking off without any further instruction. And a lot of that is because, like you see here, this is a computerized machine. These plastic shells are very difficult to get apart without proper knowledge. So it's easy to destroy that part, but also it's easy to mess up or bump something or break something that's going to be a very expensive repair. So I do not removing any covers beyond this without proper instruction. So I wanted to show you on this one, there's only one screw, but as I had mentioned in my notes, if there's a screw on the back and a screw on the side, typically how it works is the screw on the side has to come off the machine. So you have to take the screw out. The one on the back is actually kind of a set screw. So you can usually just loosen it. There's a few exceptions, but if you loosen this, this is going to slide right off. Sometimes you have to kind of lift. And that's why I said these are not always easy to get off. So you can see it takes a little work to get everything off there. But this is going to expose your needle bar cover, which we kind of want to get into today. And the ability to do a lot is going to depend on the way your machine is set up. Okay, so that's one example. So I also have this basic singer that's a little bit more like what I was talking about. There's no screw in the back, but there's one on the side. So the screw is going to come out, and it's also going to expose your needle bar area. And this one actually just falls right off. But this gives us access to things that we need to be able to see. All right, so now that you're in your machine, you're going to look for the check spring. You should see that almost all machines look the same in here, where if you're looking into the machine and to the right, you're going to see this white plate here. And what you're looking for is, well, obviously where the arrow's pointing is to the check spring. And it's this little wire looking thing. Usually there's going to be a bar here that helps backlash on the thread. So if you look just below that, you're going to see a little wire looking spring here. Okay, that's the thing we're looking for in the check spring. So that check spring, first of all, you want to make sure that it actually springs. So I'm going to show you a short video here in a minute, but when you push up on that spring, it should go up and come back down. So you can do that repeatedly and you should feel it spring. If you push it up and it stays there and doesn't want to come back down on its own, that's definitely a problem and something you have to get checked out. You want to remove any caught lint in or around the spring. I wouldn't say that there's always a buildup there. But what happens is one little piece of lint will get stuck on this on this wire part of the spring for some reason. And then when you're running your machine, another thread gets stuck on it, and then another, and it causes a buildup. And eventually you do have a bit of a buildup here. Okay. And that's not good because your thread basically flosses around this wire. And if it can't get around other threads, it's going to cause thread breaks, snags, tension issues. You also want to remove any threads, like you might have to take and slide them off with some tweezers or some picks if they're really on there. And you're going to want to remove any excess hardened lubricant. Now, you shouldn't see any lubricant on this at all. But if you have access where you can see the back of the spring in your machine, you might see some moist, like Vaseline or something of that nature, like that texture. Leave that alone. That lubricant needs to stay there, okay? But sometimes if it's been stored or sitting in a condition where it's melted the lubricant a little bit and it may have spread down, you might see a little bit of hardened residue. But even if you see some moist on that little wire, you're going to want to put a little Windex on a Q-tip and just wipe that down gently, okay? And then we're not going to oil or lubricate it in any way. That's something that's done in service. Doesn't need to be frequently. There are very specific things that need to be done. So we're not going to oil or lubricate. So let's go ahead and check out the video on cleaning the check spring. And we did talk about the check spring, I think, I don't remember which, maybe week 1 of last month. So this is our check spring, this little metal little hairy, I don't know what you call it. It's just like a little wire and you can see it springing up and down. This is what we want. When you spring it up, it should come back down. Doesn't matter what it looks like. That's the case. This is its job, is this right here. It's real easy for thread and lint to build up on that little shaft, depending on the type of material or the type of thread that the customer is using. So if you see any threads on there, you want to very carefully, you can scoot them down and take them off the end here. If you see any lint, go ahead and get a Q-tip with some Windex on it and clean that off. But you want to make sure this stays clear. And if this is not springing, if you can see, there's an actual place, I can't see it in this machine. You might be able to see its hinge to see if it's just got lint in it, if it's, gummed up. But if it's rusted or bent or anything, this is not going to work. So that's what I want you to check every once in a while. All right, so let's want to check if you can see them. You do want to see if there's any rust or lint buildup, and it's usually pretty obvious right here on the top ledge. You want to make sure that they open and close properly. If you're uncertain about that, please go back and review last month's series, I believe. I think on the threading from last month, which would be week 1, I actually covered both the check spring function and the tension disc, what it should look like when it opens and closes. So if you're not sure, let me know and I'll point you in the right direction on that. You do want to clean them occasionally just with, if they're external, you can use a Q-tip with some alcohol or Windex on it just to run along that ridge. If you don't see any issues, there's really no need to do a whole lot. There very rarely are there issues. You don't want to oil or lubricate in any way. Oil or lubrication on those tension discs is going to create more drag on your thread and create issues. All right. So to clean the tension discs, and this is especially for those of you that can't see them, my most recommended material would be these 3 here. This is pearl cotton, which is, you can use regular yarn as long as it's not going to shed too much. You can use thicker string as long as there's no like additive, no wax string, nothing like that, but something thicker is good. I really like pearl cotton because it's a little more tightly wound and it's not going to shed any lint anywhere, but it's also thin enough to get in there and kind of floss. Speaking of floss, you can also use unwaxed dental floss. You can just keep one of these little containers near your machine when you need it. And whenever all else fails, a dollar bill or a piece of sturdy paper. I wouldn't use like regular school book paper or like, lined college paper. It's really thin. You'll see when I do the video, I actually have this notepad. One of my specialized notepads is on slightly heavier weight paper. I don't know what the weight is, but a dollar bill is really good because it's already a fiber. It's technically a fabric. And most of us usually have a dollar with us, or $5 or whatever, but you can also use slightly thicker paper to get in there as well. So I'm going to show you this quick video on the best way to clean your tension discs. And this is especially good if you're using a modern machine where the tension discs are behind the plastic shell, but it also applies to your vintage machines or your Brother or Juki or Viking machines that do have the external upper tension assembly. Now we're going to have limited view in here. And what I want to show you to really, really focus on most of these machines where your tension discs, remember we went through this in our last series last month, your tension discs are in here between this little slot. So if I were to thread my machine, even with the cover off, and go through here, you're still going to go in between and back up. I can't see my tension disc, but see, this is moving. I can pull this out. Once I drop my presser foot, then I have resistance. So as long as that's happening, your tension discs are okay. If you have an issue with your tension disc, you're not going to be able to get to them. So I just wanted to show you that. So we're talking about cleaning tension discs, and this is going to be what you need for any of you that don't have access to the tension discs. On an external machine, like on a vintage machine, it's real easy, but I don't have, nobody carries cash anymore, but I do want to demonstrate what you would need to do. So as I mentioned, you can use thread, like a pearl cotton or a thicker thread that's not waxed, to clean it out. You can use a dollar bill, but that's or unwaxed dental floss. So let's pretend this is a dollar bill. All you're going to do is rub this. If you raise and lower your presser foot, if you look in that little hole, you're not going to be able to see it through the camera. I don't think you can see that something's moving. So what I like to do is put that in there, then drop your presser foot, which closes the tension disc. And you can actually, so here this won't hold it, but if I put this in there and close and drop the presser foot, the tension disc close and it's going to stay. So you can actually run that through, and you're not going to see any dirt or anything, but if there's anything in that path, it's at least going to clear it. If you can feel it like it's pulling on something, maybe you have a thread caught and it needs to go for service. But if you can put this in there and kind of draw that through, that will clean anything out of your tension discs. All right, so we're going to talk about cleaning the needle bar area. Just like I mentioned last week, my most recommended tool is going to be a pipe cleaner, but you can also use a paintbrush if you can get in there, Q-tips if you need to be able to reach something. Pipe cleaner is going to be my favorite because you can attract dust with it and you can get in there really deep. You want to remove any caught threads that you see in the joints, which I shall show you here soon. And you do not oil any parts of the machine unless your manual specifically tells you to. Most manuals are not going to tell you to oil the needle bar. And that's because when you take it in for your service, the technician knows what chemicals to use and where. And as I said previously, and I will cover this more in week 4 in our open house on remove your covers, why it's imperative that you don't add oil unless you need to. So those are the things that we're going to teach in that program, the whens and whys and hows. Okay. So you can see this is the needle bar area, and we're going to watch a short video here on this process. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the, this is what we call our needle bar area. This is called your take up lever, which we talked about last month. When you turn your hand wheel, which actually, let me take this needle off. When you turn your hand wheel, you can see all those joints moving, and you can see the needle bar moving. Now, I know it's a little hard to get to see in there. I don't have the greatest light for that available right now. But what you can do is take your pipe cleaner. And again, this is the absolute best tool for this job. And what you want to do is get in there and clean. This is a new machine still, unfortunately. So there's not a lot of lint. But you can see I can shove this way down in there. And you can clean everything out. You're not going to break anything. I would not use it on this area with this little spring, but you're not going to break anything in there or ruin anything or lose anything. So turn your hand wheel every once in a while and kind of see where the lint is gathering and get that cleaned out. We want as much lint out of this machine as possible. If you need to, you can use Q-tips. Let me grab a Q-tip. And you can put a little crud cutter or a little bit of Windex on a Q-tip here. And you can actually use that to clean any, you don't want to remove any fresh or good lubricant. So you can use your Q-tip with a little Windex or crud cutter on it to, get anything out of there. That's really all you want to do in there. I'm not going to advocate that you lubricate anything. And that's because different manufacturers have, most modern machines have a metal that's impregnated with lubricant. And so the way that needs to be lubricated, your service person knows, and I will teach you in our modern maintenance workshop, but you just really want to make sure it stays clean of anything. All right, so the last mention I have, and I don't have a video to show you of this because this is not something, it depends on the volume of machines I do in the shop. Yes, I see a lot of this, but for you, probably not. It's very imperative that you watch for this though over time, because it starts as a little problem and grows into a big problem. So you can see here in the pictures, there is thread caught, and this is your take up lever. This is the little metal piece that moves up and down in the front. And then you have all these joints that work together between the hand wheel, the needle bar, and the hook. And it's just, there's a lot of thread and they get caught in these joints. So what happens is one thread gets caught for some odd reason, and then it sticks up and catches another thread. And then before you know it, you have tons of thread wrapped around it. So you want to check for all of these joints through here. All right. And this is really imperative on your lower end machines. For those of you that are using machines that you paid less than, let's say $300 or $400 for, brand new, make sure you're checking this often, because on this machine, these are all metal parts that it looks like. Sometimes right here at this joint where the problem is, these are just machined in with plastic parts, which means that over time, so much thread builds up in that joint that it pushes this piece off of the shaft. When that happens on most of those low-end machines, the machine is done. With throwaway machines, they don't make a lot of replacement parts. And honestly, if they did, it's going to cost you more to repair it than the machine is worth. So this is why we want to check for one thread is a problem. Having this many threads is a much bigger problem. All right. So you don't want to yank on the threads to remove them. So you don't want to just go in there with force, because again, if you pop, even if this is metal, if you pop these parts off of their shaft, then you're going to be looking at a repair bill, because most of those are machined together where you don't just pop them back on. You don't want to disassemble anything to remove the threads. Never in any of these classes that I teach or my free programs am I ever going to advocate that you disassemble anything without specific instruction. So please don't take your screwdriver and try to take things apart to get that thread out of there. What you really want to do is soak these threads, get some sewing machine oil, put several drops right into the thread, let it soak in, and that's going to kind of lubricate it so it's going to be more willing to slide out of there. Then you're just going to use your picks and your tweezers to gently remove the threads. That's really all you can do. And honestly, if you're struggling and you're spending hours on this and can't get it out without damaging anything, then it's time to see a professional. Okay. So this is a picture of, I don't think this is the same one in that picture, but this is my most recent one that I did. And here on the left is a picture of what I saw when I opened up the machine. And then on the right is all of the thread that I clipped out. So you can see there's actually 3 different colors of thread in here. We have blue, white, and black. So it probably started, this little black curl here, I want to say was on the very on the inside. So it probably had gotten caught first and started collecting more and more threads. And so every time she changed thread, it just kept collecting thread. All right. So that's what you want to look for. All right. So if you have questions, please leave them in the comments. I'm going to go through and I'm going to answer them for you. I'm happy to give you more information. Be sure to ask for the handout if you'd like one, and I'll send it to you in the link. If you missed last week's, let me know. They're all on the same link. I'll send you to the link to the replay and the handouts. And then next week, we're going to go through the actual machine service is and signs that your machine is crying for help. Believe me, there is a lot of subtle signs that you're missing if you are not regular about your machine service. Then in 2 weeks, we're going to host our open house and the beta launch of our modern machine maintenance program. It's going to teach you to skip going to the service shop. Our whole intention is to make you more self-sufficient, save you time and money. I do have the open house seat reservation already opened. The benefit to that is if you can't make it to our live event, then you're still going to get the replay sent to you, and you're going to get all of the same sign up bonuses that anybody watching live did. Now, this is really vital because we greatly reduce the enrollment fee on our beta launch programs because it is a test program. No one has built a program like ours. So we recognize that we build it and we kind of stop halfway, and we work with you to help us deliver to you what you need, if that makes sense. So you're going to get a lot of one-on-one help as a founding member of this program that you're not going to get once we officially launch. So that's what's happening in 2 weeks. It is definitely meant for you to care for your modern machine without having to take it to the service shop, unless your timing has to be reset or you do have an actual major repair. Okay, so make sure you join me in 2 weeks for that. Let me close this window out here. And again, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I'll go back and I'll answer them. We do have a handout. So thank you again for joining me today, and I will see you all next week.